Hello, my friends. Hello, and welcome once again to the adventurous Von Manor, where it's time for an unhaul of adventure. Yeah, every once in a while, books must go. And I've had these sitting around here ready to be unhauled for a while. And I always intended to make a video about some of the stuff I'm getting rid of, and I just never have. But yeah, let's talk about these books I'm unhauling. Roger, are you ready? Roger's not particularly thrilled. He's never too happy to unhaul books, even if I don't particularly need them. So let's talk about these books that I'm going to be unhauling, and why am I getting rid of them anyway? And then I'm looking over here, and sitting on top of this pile is a book I most certainly do not want to get rid of. Are you trying to sneak things in there, Roger, just for vengeance? Probably, but this book I'm not getting rid of. It's just, I don't know why it's sitting there. This is The Fortress of the Pearl by Michael Moorcock. This is my original copy of The Fortress of the Pearl. Of course, this is an Elric novel. I have it part of the big fancy hardcover Elric set that I've talked about, but I like this old. See, it's even got tape on it that's so old that it darkened up. So I'm going to keep this, even if there's no logical reason to do so. I'll stick it right down there. Roger, don't try to sneak any things in there like that. That's not cool, man. So anyway, the rest of the books probably I'm going to get rid of, but let me take a look through them. Okay, well this one is probably the biggest thing I'm getting rid of, and that is this old edition of The Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings. This was the 50th anniversary edition. Of course, I've got a newer Lord of the Rings right there. This thing. It's a nice book. It's a nice book. The spine is very sad. Has a very sad spine, because I think this was an edition that you weren't actually supposed to read. It's supposed to like sit there on your shelf and be pretty. But of course I read it. It's a nice, of course it's Lord of the Rings. It's beautiful. But yeah, I mean, it's a lovely book. Just, has kind of a sad spine now. And I've got a newer one that I like better. So I am going to unload it. I don't know where it's going to go. But yeah, The Lord of the Rings, 50th anniversary edition. That's going to go. Oh, and here's some comics. Aren't you guys thrilled? You love it when I break out comics. But I've got The Man of Steel, several copies of The Man of Steel. This is John Byrne's version of Superman. And I've got these all in hardcover now too. So there's one of them there. I've got a whole set of John Byrne's Man of Steel. God, I've got a lot of these. These are not all John Byrne. There's some Jerry Ordway and others. But it was from the time when John Byrne was on Superman, which was actually when I really started buying the comic, actually, was when John Byrne took over Superman. So, yeah. That's that. And now some books. Now this one I've been intending to get rid of for a while, just because I've got so much Sherlock Holmes. This is the Penguin edition of Sherlock Holmes, the Penguin Complete edition of Sherlock Holmes, which is a lovely paperback copy of Sherlock Holmes, has everything in here. But of course, I have a lot of Sherlock Holmes in the Manor. There's really no reason for me to hold on to this, so I should probably get rid of it. Here is The King in Yellow. The King in Yellow by Robert W. Chambers. I have a better edition of this now. This is just a print on demand copy, some cheapo edition. But I've got the Dover edition now, so I don't really need that. I'll get rid of that. And here's Dune. Dune. This is actually a cool copy of Dune. This is the old book club edition of Dune. But I've got the fancy pants Dune over here, and I also have Dune as an ebook, so I don't really need another copy of Dune, even though this one's really cool. So yeah, I'm gonna get rid of that, probably. Here's a book I almost dropped. This is the Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. This was a Barnes & Noble edition. I have another edition of this, so I don't really need it, even though the cover is kind of weird and cool. So yeah, the Metamorphosis. And this is The Horny Werewolf. The Last Werewolf by Glenn Duncan. This is about a really horny werewolf. And it was good. It was a good book. It wasn't great. I thought it was decent, but it wasn't like the best werewolf book ever. And there were a couple other books in this series, and I just never really got to them or felt the need to get to them. But, not a bad book. It was just, it was okay. It was a good book, just not a great book. And I feel no need to hold on to it. This is the personal memoirs of U.S. Grant, which I have. I know I have the Library of America edition of this. And again, I have a digital copy of this as well. So there's really no reason for me to hold on to this, even though it's a cool copy. So U.S. Grant, getting rid of U.S. Grant. Sorry, U.S. Grant. Next, the questions. How philosophy can change your life. It can change your life, Roger. This is by Lou Marinoff, PhD. He's a PhD, man. He knows about changing your life. I'm not a huge philosophy fan, This book cost me apparently $5.98. I have no memory of purchasing it. The lady of the manor says it isn't hers. Roger says it isn't his. I don't know why I have it. So, even though this book could change my life, do I really want my life changed? I don't know. Probably not. Goodbye, the questions. What else do I have in here? I have Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. This is the Norton Critical Edition. It's battered and beat up. And I have actually multiple copies of this book. Great book, just don't particularly need this one. And what else do I have in here? Oh, this is an oddity. This is Antonia Fraser's King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. That's King Arthur there. David Wiley actually, I think, attempted to read this and gave it a not so great review, if I'm remembering correctly. No reason for me to have it. I have no great need to read. This kind of looks like a kid's edition of King Arthur, and I don't need a kid's edition of King Arthur. Okay, what do we have here? This is Stephen Mitchell's version of Gilgamesh. It's not a straight translation. It's a version of Gilgamesh. It's a good one. This is a good book, but I don't know that I need it since I have other Gilgamesh in the Manor. But yeah, there's that. Oh, here is Penguin Classics, a complete annotated listing. This is a complete annotated listing. Not anymore, it's not. This is many years old. At one time, this was a complete listing. Now it is an out-of-date listing. That's the out-of-date listing. And this is a book I read last year? Year before, maybe. This is Chasing Graves by Ben Galley. This is a pretty good fantasy, adventure, horror type book. It was part of a trilogy. I never read the other two books in the trilogy. Kind of intended to, but then kind of didn't get to them. First one was decent. It's just not something I was going to continue with. So yeah, this one's gonna go. Cool cover though. This one, Godblind. This is a fantasy novel by Anna Stevens. It turns out that I also have a Kindle edition of this. So I'm not sure I need the paperback. But actually, I might hold on to it because you never know. Maybe I will hold on to that. I don't know. Even though I have the Kindle version. This I'm not going to hold on to. This is A Lush and Seething Hell by John Horner Jacobs. I read this for Horror Mayhem last year. And it wasn't great. It was okay. It wasn't great. Certainly nothing I need to hold on to. This is Esther Fraser's Gnome Man's Land. It's Gnome Man's Land, which is a hilarious cover, but I can't see reading Gnome Man's Land. Maybe I will. I'll hold on to that. Maybe I will read No Man's Land. I'm reconsidering. This is The Marble Faun by Nathaniel Hawthorne. It's a nice old-timey paperback of The Marble Faun, which I got for 50 cents and no longer need, since I have it in the Library of America, and I also have it on my Kindle. I have a digital copy of this, so don't need that really hanging out. This is a tore-up old copy of Arthur Clarke's Rendezvous with Rama. I have at least one other paperback copy of this, at least. Probably I have more than one. It's cool. It's got the step back, but the front cover is a little torn up. Probably no reason to hold on to this particular copy. And this is just a duplicate. This is The Tombs of Autun by Ursula K. Le Guin. This is one of the Earthsea trilogy. And I literally have, I think, 3 copies of this, and they're all the same. So no reason to hold on to that. And here's a random signet copy of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain. Yes, of course, I have another copy of Tom Sawyer. I have multiple copies of Tom Sawyer. So, yeah, get rid of Tom Sawyer. Here is The House of Seven Gables by Nathaniel Hawthorne. This is another cool old paperback copy. Again, do I really need it? Considering I've got other copies of this. Again, have a digital copy. I've got it in the Library of America. I like the creepy old house. I like that. But do I like it enough to keep it? Probably not. And this is Battlestar Galactica. And you're saying, why on earth would you get rid of that book? Well, I would only get rid of this book because I have a nicer copy of it. Of course, I don't need 2 copies of Battlestar Galactica when I already have a nicer copy. So I would, if it was my only one, of course, I would hold on to it. Of course. I mean, it's old school Battlestar Galactica. The novelization by Glenn A. Larson and Robert Thurston. So basically, Robert Thurston wrote this book. And what else do I have in here? I've got Stephen King's The Dark Tower. I have a nicer copy of it. Thanks to Dishelved with Adam White. Adam White sent me a really nice copy of The Dark Tower. So I don't need this is my old tattered, beat up paperback copy of that. No longer need it. Here is Tender is the Night. This is actually the edition that I first read it in. Love this book. It's a great book. I have 2 other copies. Yeah, I have got 2 other copies of this book. So I don't need this old paperback anymore, even though it's cool. It's cool. So there's that. Here's an old copy of Edith Wharton's Ethan Frome, which I don't need. This one was 48 cents at Half Price Books. 48 cents for this. Again, I have another copy of it. That probably cost me more than 48 cents. This one, this is Robert Louis Stevenson's books. I'm not getting rid of this. Roger, why are you sneaking stuff in here? I'm not getting rid of that. That's, even though I don't need it at all, I'm not getting rid of that. Roger, man, he's sneaky. Lovecraft Country by Matt Ruff. It was a good book. Don't know that it's good enough to keep for me. I liked it. I thought it was good. But yeah, not something I probably am going to hold on to forever. Caesar, The Civil Wars. Caesar, The Civil Wars. Or The Civil War, excuse me. The Civil War. The Civil War by Caesar. This is a hardcover reprint of Penguin's edition of this. I don't need it because I've got a really nice, fancy version of Caesar, which has everything. I don't know that I need this because I do have, of course, an ebook edition. I think I have the ebook edition of the Penguin edition, so don't really need it. Probably will get rid of that. Okay, getting close to the end of the pile. What is this and why is this? Oh, this is an old edition of Kipling, which I have another copy of with the dust jacket. This is volume 1. A selection of his stories and poems. Beautiful illustration in here. Love Kipling. Haven't read Kipling for a while, but I've really enjoyed what I've read from Kipling. But I don't need this since I already have another copy of this exact same edition. Then I have this copy, this old edition of The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux. Great book. I have the Penguin edition, which has a better translation in it. So I don't need that. This is a pile of crap. I don't know why this is in here. This is The Fun House, a novelization of a movie nobody remembers by Dean Koontz. There's Dean Koontz when he was cool. Dean Koontz back when he had his mustache and he didn't have the crazy demon-created hair. But yeah, I don't really need the Fun House or its creepy people in here. This is a movie novelization, pretending it's not a movie novelization, but it is. This is the annotated Big Sleep by Raymond Chandler. Why on earth would I get rid of this? Because I already have this book. I don't feel like I need to keep the annotated edition. Of course, I have other copies of the Big Sleep, 2 other copies actually. I didn't feel like the annotated edition was. I didn't think it was great enough to keep. Let's just put it that way. When I can just read the regular version of it. This is Incognito, The Secret Lives of the Brain by David Eagleman. This was interesting from what I remember, but I don't need to keep it. And we have, this is another copy of the Picture of Dorian Gray. This is an old Barnes & Noble edition. Yeah, this is the old Barnes & Noble edition without its dust jacket. And I have a hardcover Penguin of this, so I don't need that. This is Thomas Pynchon's V. I've never read this. I've decided I'm never going to read this. This is Stephen King's The Dead Zone. I have another copy of Stephen King's The Dead Zone. I don't know how I ended up with 2 Dead Zones, but I did. So I don't, and it's exactly the same. I have exactly the same copy, so I don't know why I have 2 of them. Don't need 2 of them. And this is Edgar Rice Burroughs. Of course, I've got a ton, but these are the Edgar Rice Burroughs editions where some asshat put stickers right on top of John Carter and on top of John Carter's face and on top of Taras Tarkis's face. So why would you do that? That was deliberate. You know, people that work in bookstores, sometimes they're really cruel. This is The Blithedale Romance by Nathaniel Hawthorne. Good book. Have another copy of it. This one is like kind of a cool, trippy cover. Yeah, don't think I need to keep it since I have it. I have 2 other copies actually. And I actually like this one. This is The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. I have so many copies of The Time Machine that I probably should unload some of them. So this is the one. This is the Penguin English Library. It's a really nice copy of The Time Machine, but I am probably going to unload it because I don't really need it. I've got like a super fancy pants Time Machine right up here. I have Time Machine on the Kindle. I have Time Machine up there in another book. I've got lots of Time Machine lying around, so I probably don't need that one. This is actually the last thing in this box. Wasn't that a thrill? Yes, getting rid of all of those books. And probably more besides, but definitely these, I think. Not thrilled. Okay, guys, that's all I have for you for today. Catch me next time.